So I've given myself a rather ambitious title for today's talk: How to Survive and Flourish in a Pandemic. I don't know about you, but certainly the longer that all of this goes on, the harder I find it to cope with. We're living at a time where we're told by some, be sure to wash your hands and wear a face mask and all will be well. And yet we're being overwhelmed, not just by one wave, but by probably 4 major waves at the moment. COVID-19 is, of course, causing huge problems all over the world and is affecting us all. And looming over that, a global recession, many people, particularly young people, losing their jobs and afraid of what the future might hold. Bigger than both of those, climate change, causing huge problems all over the world. Massive fires, hurricanes, extremes of weather and temperature, millions of refugees. And as many of us have become aware even more recently, biodiversity collapse. The very ecosystems on which all of our lives depend are falling apart. How can we survive and flourish, not just in a pandemic, but with these enormous waves overwhelming us one after another? Well, the basic answer that I want to give, it's about pacing yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We need to recognize that we're in it for the long haul, and we need to have strategies and ways of coping and even flourishing when life is not normal. It's not just a case of battening down the hatches for a few weeks. As our politicians are telling us, it's likely to be months before we can really come out of this, and things are probably going to get worse before they get better. So we need to pace ourselves. And I very simply want to spell out that word pace this morning and what it can mean for us. Pace: pray, accept, connect, and enjoy. And if enjoy sounds hard, well, wait till you get there, because I've some ideas on that. I want to suggest that if we do these 4 things, pray, accept, connect, and enjoy, then we can not only survive, but even through this time, we can find ways of flourishing. First of all, pray. In the reading that Dorothy read for us earlier, we heard these words: do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Those words, do not be anxious about anything, may be hard to hear. Anxiety is quite natural, and I'm sure all of us have anxious times, both for ourselves, for those we love, and for the wider situation in our society, for young people, for those who are vulnerable. Anxiety is normal. It's what we do with it that matters. And what we're invited to do here is turn our anxiety into prayer, to take it to God. To every time that we feel things are getting on top of us, take that to God in prayer. With thanksgiving, that means counting our blessings, even when life is difficult, noticing the small things, whether it's a bit of bird song out the window, whether it's something that cheered us up on social media, whether it's a special treat, things that we can thank God for in the midst of this. But turning everything into prayer, not just prayer as something we do when we're faced with a particular situation, but prayer as a rhythm that sustains us through the day, that becomes as natural as breathing, a conversation with God. It's what famously Brother Lawrence called practicing the presence of God. And if you don't know the story of Brother Lawrence, it's one worth mentioning at a time like this. Brother Lawrence seemed at the time not to be anyone special at all. He was a lay brother, he wasn't ordained. He was working in a monastery back in the Middle Ages, and his job was in the kitchen, cooking, washing dishes. And in his life, he didn't seem to make much impact on anybody at all. It was only after he died, when his letters were found and read and then published, that his thoughts became so influential. And this little book, Practicing the Presence of God, has become a significant book for many, many people ever since. Because what Brother Lawrence learned was that while he was doing everyday menial tasks, while he was cutting vegetables, while he was washing up, while he was cleaning the floor in the kitchens in the monastery where he lived, he could practice the presence of God. He could invite God into that situation. He could do everything that he was doing with God beside him and within him, and bring that to God. He wasn't an educated man. He was a man with significant physical disabilities. And in the end, he wasn't well enough to keep working in the kitchen. And he ended up repairing shoes and sandals for the other monks. And yet he learned what it was to be peaceful and content in that situation. You see, prayer is more than mindfulness. It's similar, but it's more than mindfulness, because we're inviting the living God, the creator of the universe, into our situation, into our feelings, our hearts, and our minds. So can I encourage you to have prayer as basic as breathing through this time? And then secondly, accept. Anne forwarded this cartoon to me that someone had forwarded to her on social media, and it's based on a book that has helped a lot of people these last months by the artist Charlie Maxey. It's about the fox, the mole, the dog, and the horse. Can't remember if I've got them in the right order. But here we've got, what does it mean to be happy? Asked the fox. And the horse replies, happiness is letting go of what your life is supposed to look like. None of us are living the life we dreamed of at the moment. I was hearing a couple of young people talking the other day, and they were saying, this isn't what our age is meant to be like. We're meant to be able to be free. We're meant to be able to travel. We're meant to be able to meet up. And of course, they can't do those things. And none of us can have the life we want at this time. But the key is not to rail against that. The key is to not let that frustrate us, but to accept the reality of the situation that we're in. To accept this situation of COVID-19, to ground ourselves in the reality of it, to accept what goes with it, our own and others' limitations, our own and others' frustrations, our own and others' needs. All of those are things we need to accept. It's a time to be gentle on ourselves and a time to be gentle on others. To accept that this is a tough time. To accept that people aren't going to be as productive as they normally are. That people aren't going to be quite their normal selves. So this is a time to accept who we are and the situation that we're in and how it's affecting us all. But then thirdly, this is a time to connect. And I believe this is really important. It's a time to invest in relationships intentionally. We can't do all the things that we would like to do. We can't meet up in large groups, and it may be quite soon that we won't be able to meet up at all outside our own bubbles. But we can still connect with those who matter to us, whether it's over Zoom or by telephone, or even a good old-fashioned letter. Make sure you keep in touch. I certainly found during the first 3 months of lockdown that some of my oldest and closest friends who live hundreds of miles away were the people that I really just needed to reach out to and talk to. And this may be a time for you to do that. But as well as reaching out to those who are closest to you, to family and friends, also connect with those who are near you, those within your own bubble. Invest in those relationships, and those who are down your street, those who live locally to you. Try and invest in those relationships as much as you're able to. Many people have also found it helpful to connect more closely with nature, with God's creation through this time. And even as we enter into autumn and then winter, as we see the beautiful colours of the leaves on the trees, but also as time gets colder, as the days get shorter, as the weather gets more miserable, let's connect with the rhythms of creation and recognize that those rhythms of fruitfulness, but then of barrenness, are a normal part of the natural cycle. But at the end of the autumn and the winter, spring will come again. And at the end of this COVID time, spring will come again. Connect with God's creation. Connect with your Christian family. Our numbers at our Zoom service have started to tail off a little bit, and I can quite understand that. I think we're all getting zoomed out. But whether it's through joining us on a Sunday morning or in other ways, keep in touch with the St. Mary's family through this time. And connect with your inner self. Be aware of how you are. I had a time this week with my spiritual director, who I meet with now on Zoom every month or two. And I was reflecting how there were things bubbling up inside me that were surprising me and I wasn't expecting, as I processed what we're all going through at this time. And in relation to that, I want to take us to another verse from that reading that Dorothy read to us, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Connect with what's good for you. Connect with what feeds you. And that means disconnect from the things that are unhelpful. It may be disconnect from social media. Have a certain time of the evening where you turn off your phone, where you don't check the news or the social media on Twitter or Facebook or whatever else you're on, WhatsApp, whatever else. There are times where we do want to keep in touch, but there are times where we recognize we've had enough and we need to switch off. And actually this verse is one that for years when our children were younger, we had printed out and stuck at the top of our television as a reminder that what we watch on TV or on our laptops or on our phones can be true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable and excellent and praiseworthy, but it can also be destructive and dangerous, and it can bring us down. And we need to be careful what we watch and what we allow into our lives and into our homes through this time. So pray, accept, connect, and finally enjoy. When our lives are now in a routine where we can't travel very much, where every day seems a bit the same, it's important to have special treats and surprises. If you're in a home with other people, then it may mean to choose a particular day and make that a day when you have a special meal so that something doesn't feel routine, where you get in nice food, where you light a candle or two, where you buy flowers. I'm sure Amanda will be glad to hear me say that. All sorts of things that we can do to give ourselves things that build us up and help us to enjoy ourselves, even in the midst of this time. Small pleasures. And then things that are good for us psychologically, physically, and emotionally. Creativity. As you all know, Anne is very physically limited at the moment, in quite a bit of pain, but she's discovered that using the sewing machine, she can make face masks, and she quite enjoys it. She enjoys choosing the materials. She enjoys the satisfaction of knowing that this is helping others, and she just enjoys making something that's well made and beautiful. Creativity, whatever it is, in your garden, in your kitchen, with a paintbrush, whatever it is that helps you with creativity. And physical exercise is important. And depending on our stage of life, that will mean different things for different ones of us. But trying to get physical exercise is important. Enjoying beauty in nature, and even if you can't visit art galleries, looking at things online. Enjoy being in the moment. Don't worry too much about tomorrow, as Matthew 6 says, and enjoy God's presence. Final bit from Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near, and the God of peace will be with you. So as we face this pandemic, and we learn to pace ourselves. Let's root ourselves in prayer. Let's accept the situation and our limitations and those of others. Next, connect with each other, with creation, with God. And let's enjoy things that feed us, that break up the monotony, and that help us to get through and bring us pleasure through this time.